Hey guys, Veebat here with another Vplays, and today we're looking at the Messerschmitt Project 1099 B-2. We're just going to call it the B-2 for the time being because it's a lot easier to deal with. Oh, hey Morgan, what's going on? So, the deal here is with the Tier 9 German ground attacker, it looks very reminiscent of a 262 because Messerschmitt, for the most part, after they developed the 262, started developing a lot of iterations based on the design of the 262. This was actually supposed to be a heavy fighter, believe it or not, because it essentially had the exact same control surfaces as the 262, but a much bigger fuselage, and it allowed it to be able to carry a little bit more for air-to-ground ordnance, and obviously a pretty impressive array of tail gunners. On this particular model, you do see 3 guns on it, but this only comes once you're fully upgraded. The initial setup is just going to be this dorsal gunner you see here, and aside from that, your field of fire is rather limited. Fully upgraded though, it's a pretty impressive field of fire, obviously due to the fact that these 2 cannons on the side can swivel not only outwards but also up and down. The fully upgraded version of this aircraft allows you to be able to put on 4 Mark 103 cannons, which are going to be those favor cannons that we really like on our ground attackers, or sorry, on all of our German aircraft, and ground attackers especially, because it allows us to be able to get a little bit more reach, and with 4 of them it pumps out a lot of damage, and they don't overheat nearly as quickly as they would like on my TA-152. The major change, however, is going to come in the form of the fact that this thing carries a total of 4 bombs. It doesn't seem like much, but once you start thinking about it and comparing it to the 329, you'll realize that the 329 is very limited in the fact that it can only drop 2 bombs. There are a lot of hardened structures out there, and these 30mm cannons, while not bad, aren't going to be nearly as capable as the bombs that you'll need to use in order to take out these more heavily guarded structures. So we're going to go ahead and actually drop a total of, we're going to drop all 4 here because why not? But if I needed to take a zone solo, I could just drop 1 of these bombs on a hardened structure in order to finish it off. So the guns will do a blind share of the work, and then we can just use what's left to kind of top it off. It looks like we got some bad guys coming in here. Let's go ahead and see if we can get these guns on target a little bit. I see you, Morgan. Don't you launch those rockets at me.
A rocket has reached the target. Enemy object damaged.
Looks like we knocked out Splash. That works for me. Whew. So we still have a little bit of that capability to do what we love to do in these German ground attackers, which is to be able to bring these guns to bear against other ground attackers, as well as some low-flying air defense assets. But really, it's going to be the fact that we now have jet engines, which allows us to really be able to kick up the speed. One of the disadvantages of the 329 was, even though it was a pretty fast ground attacker, it really couldn't get up to those 400 mile an hour speeds, but until you burned all of the boost, this airframe, we were able to really get up to that speed much quicker. You can see here we're putting a heavy hurt on this J7W2, giving him a taste of his own 30mm cannons, although these are German variant. Now fortunately for me, I do have my rocket base coming in here and helping out with this site, but it looks like I've got the enemy ground attacker Splash coming in on me right now. We dropped 2 bombs here to try and help with taking this zone. Right now I'm just trying to put some distance, but Splash has already taken out my wing and my engine, so I don't have much hope of being able to get away right now. So we're just going to have to respawn back at our original sector. However, it looks like our bombers are coming in from our command center, so that's a good spot for us. We should be able to take this fairly effectively, and I think our player and bots are taking out the enemy bombers as they're coming in. So I think we're in a pretty good stage right now. Usually getting that rocket facility or the military base is going to put you in a very advantageous position because it will allow you to be able to get continuous offense. With the command center, somebody can always shoot down those bombers, so it limits your effectiveness, but that military base is always lobbing its rockets into a site, and as long as you go into the same site and try and augment its capability, you should be able to take it relatively quickly. It's almost like you have like an invisible ally kind of helping you out as you're going in and taking on these targets on your own. We only need to take one more site, and since this AA site here is only soft targets, we just got to get these guns on target, and we have now captured the airfield. We did lose the military facility, but I see that Splash is making his way out of that zone and heading for our command center, so I figure I'm going to use this terrain to block my approach, so that way he doesn't have an opportunity to react or maneuver on me. And I realize he should be, yep, he's right about there, spotted by one of my allies, and I'm going to vector in for the kill. These Mark 103s do have a very fast shell travel time, which means pull and lead is relatively easy, and they pack quite a wallop. So we're just going to let these sing. We've already taken out his tail as well as one of his wings. So he is going to have a heck of a time trying to maneuver. We've taken him out, which gave us a little bit more capture on this zone, which is good because we still have bombers inbound, and it looks like the military base is still conducting launches. Speaking of the military base, let's see if we can try and grab that site back. Again, dipping the nose just a little bit and hitting that boost is allowing us to be able to get up to well over 350 miles per hour. In fact, we're broaching that 400 mile an hour mark now. We have the engine cooler on here, which is a nice ability to allow us to get across the battlefield a lot quicker. And I see one of these ground sites here, although I'm shooting the wrong pillbox now, is just about dead, so that gave us a little bit of capture, but these soft targets are really what these cannons like to see. And we're going to try and put some damage into this center site, but we just don't have the bombs right now. I'm taking out these AA guns because they really will put a bit of a hurt on me, because aside from the... whoa! Pretty much scraped the tail on the ground there. Opposed to the Russian ground attackers, we got a lot less armor on this platform, so AA can really do a serious number on us. If we can take this site right here, this center structure, that will capture this zone. It's hard to see what we're shooting at. Had to let the guns cool off a little, and I'm worried I'm going to run into these structures, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the boost. And much like we did in our Russian ground attackers, we can kind of do this stall turn where we allow the tail to kick over by hitting the air brakes as well as the flaps, and then boosting through the rest of the turn. And although we're only going 80 or even 90 miles an hour, we're still able to maintain relative control and to take the rest of this site. This is pretty much going to be the end of the battle for us, but we're still going to try and get to a target if we can. It's always nice to get a target of opportunity towards the end of the battle, but we only need to get 600 capture points in order to conclude the battle. Morgan seemed like a good sport throughout the entire battle, so I threw up a GG here, not to kind of rub it in their face that we had won, but to say I did enjoy myself. It was a good battle, and thanks for playing. That's kind of the intent here, and if people have take a good game in any other way from me, know that it's never been in a malicious intent. I'm just glad to have people to play against, and whether you did well or not, it's really just the joy of the combat. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and head on to the end results screen and talk a little bit about the upgrades. Alright, so here we are at the end results screen. Let's take a little bit more of a deep look at the airframe, what kind of upgrade tree we're looking at here, and you can see as we're looking at the results here, we were able to get around pretty much across the entire battlefield due to the incredible speed and power of this airframe, and using that to our advantage, we were able to capture 4 zones. We did kill 63 ground targets, and we made short work of quite a few of the heavier sites utilizing those 4 bombs. That put us at the top of the heap for our own team and also put us well above the score of both of the other players on the enemy team, despite the fact that we did have a B-2 opposing us. Let's go ahead and take a look at the upgrade tree and see what type of grind we're going to be looking towards. So starting off here, this Gmo engine as well as the top Gmo engine are also going to be available on the TA183, the 1092, and the 262HG2, as well as the BV P.212.03. So the nice advantage here is that if you are doing any of the other lines and you have gotten to tier 9, you have most likely unlocked all of these engines. And if you haven't and you're just running down the ground attacker line, good news, you've set yourself up for success for when you get into jet fighters anywhere else on the German line. So you are in a good state. So that is good to know. Additionally, this aircraft does have the capability of being able to mount this weird 50 millimeter unicorn cannon. People call it the unicorn or the narwhal because it actually comes right out of the nose of the airframe. It is a completely different concept, but is unique to this airframe, and it allows you to kind of get those shells out to a really good range of 4,593, which is going to be your first upgrade off of the stock guns, which are just going to be 4 of the Mark 108s. This should be a relatively easy transition for a lot of us because these are the same guns you saw on the 329. So you'll start out with the same guns, pretty decent rate of fire, good enough range, and the ability to do a pretty good damage, a total of 800 damage per second. That's nothing to really look down upon. That's pretty good. And I enjoyed that, and the rate of fire allowed you to really be able to put those cannons to use against other ground attackers. The 50 millimeter cannon, however, you're going to sacrifice a lot of your ability to get that gun to hit a flying target. You can do it, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult, and the rate of fire is much slower. It is still a pretty good rate of fire, but it's going to have to get one shell to make contact. You can't afford to miss any of the shells because if you do, it's going to put the enemy at a better in a better position to come and get you, especially since you're going to be going up against the IL-40 at this point. And the IL-40 is going to get 623 millimeter cannons, which means, again, like we talked about in the IL-40 video, the roles are going to kind of change a little bit, especially if you're running the unicorn build. You're going to be at a disadvantage to the Russian ground attacker. But your damage goes up significantly, up to 1200 damage per second, and you hit a range of this nearly 4,600 feet. Now, that is a massive range. You really can snipe out targets. It's very effective against hardened structures, so any of those pillboxes, you can rip those up easily enough, and it's very effective for keeping your aircraft at a safe distance and taking out a lot of those air defense sites. Meanwhile, the fully upgraded version, you're going to be getting a balance of both worlds here. You're not going to have nearly the same range as you would with a 50, but it's going to be significantly better than what you would see with the original 30mm Mark 108s. And since these are Mark 103s, you're going to get a much faster shell velocity, and despite the fact that it has a lower rate of fire, you saw how easy it was to be able to get those shells to make contact with an enemy while they were running away from us or even going across their field of view, since we were able to take out both ground attack aircraft utilizing our main guns, and we do have these top 103s equipped. The damage per second isn't going to go up significantly from the stock 30mm cannons, and it's still going to be a little bit under what you would get with a 50mm, but they're much more versatile, and you saw that they were very effective in this instance. I mentioned it at the beginning of the video, but your stock setup for the tail gunner is going to have a very limited field of view compared to the next upgrade. The first gun only has a gun elevation of 50, a field of fire of 40, and only a gun depression of 10 degrees, which makes sense because all you had equipped was just this single tail gunner. In fact, I still own it, so you can see it just removes those two on the tail. And it feels kind of barren and like you're missing something. But when you go ahead and upgrade this and put on those extra two guns, it's still being used by a single gunner, so you only can use one gun at a time. But it increases your field of view significantly and allows you to be able to fire down to negative 40 degrees, which means that you have a much better arc of fire and you can actually shoot at things that are a little bit below you. And they seem to be a lot more responsive because you're not waiting for one gun to traverse across the entire field of view. It will allow you to be able to swap between these three guns, whichever one has the optimum firing angle. You don't get an increase in range, but you get a little bit of a bump in its effective damage per second, so that is a nice addition for you. These are going to be the same bombs that you had on the 329 as well as the HG2, the HG3, and on the 1102B. So you do have similar bombs to what you've been experiencing previously, and you get 4 of them. So what I was trying to talk about during the battle, but maybe kind of lost my train of thought, was normally when you go in with a 329, you'd rely on the guns to try and weaken, damage, or take out a lot of softer targets, and you'd use the bombs for those hardened targets that your guns just couldn't take care of. And usually a 329 will take multiple passes in order to clear a zone. However, if you were to go up against an IL-20 at tier 8, he could clear that zone in a single pass with those 12 rockets and those 2 massive Fab 500 bombs and those 57mm cannons that allows him to be able to reach out and touch those targets at range and take out hardened structures. So an IL-20 can rip through. But your 329 was probably going to have to make quite a few passes, and in a lot of instances relied on killing another aircraft in order to get that zone flipped because it just had 2 bombs. Now you're looking at an aircraft that can fire at a pretty decent range. You can start putting the hurt on those softer targets at a distance, damaging some of the lighter armored structures going into one of the sites, and then use the bomb to finish that off, and you can take out 4 sites with these bombs in a single pass. Another important factor is here, if you're going after a mining plant, you know how important it is to take that main center site because it's over 50% of the capture zone to take out those 4 smokestacks and the associated buildings. In a 329, you really had to almost stop the aircraft, unload your shells, take out as much as you possibly could, and hope that you hit enough of it for those 2 bombs to be able to finish off that center area. With this airframe, you have more than enough bomb capability to be able to take out that center site in a single pass. That is a huge game changer and makes you much more viable as a ground attacking platform. So that is a huge advantage. The other advantage is Germans have always been good at having very fast ground attackers, and while my 329 could get up to 400 miles per hour and burning all of its boost in order to get to that state, usually I didn't get to 400 miles an hour until I was at the end of my boost. And then I may dip the nose to sustain it a little bit more on the 329. However, on this airframe, I dip the nose down about negative 10 degrees, I hit that boost, and by the time I get to about a quarter of that boost time, I'm already up over 400 miles an hour, and I can sustain my flight at around 435 miles an hour, which allows me to be able to get across that battlefield very effectively. That is a very respectable speed and allows me to be a very strong element on the battlefield, and it does kind of change the way that I've viewed German ground attackers, and it changes the way that you would play them opposed to what I would advocate for the 265 and the 329, which is mostly to use it to kill other ground attackers and try to find contested zones. This thing can do fine in any instance and is a lot of fun to fly, and it looks kind of cool, honestly. But anyways, that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to talk about when it came to the B-2. We do have a lot to look forward to because as we get to the 1102 Bravo, the 1102 Bravo actually gets a little bit more airspeed, and it also gets a much better set of guns. They're actually different than the 30 millimeters that we've been experiencing. They have a little bit less overall range, but they have a much higher rate of fire, which makes them a much more competitive gun for getting into those dogfights like we talked about before. And it actually has a lot more damage coming out of those guns. So it's going to be a little bit of fun to get into this thing, and the tail gunner gets a much more robust characteristics as well. So we do have a lot to look forward to. It's more of the same, but it's going to make it even better. And I am going to be selling this aircraft once we complete the grind on it. I do enjoy it, but I really want to get that tier 10 ground attacker because I have yet to get one. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will catch you on the next one.